What if you woke up in ancient Egypt, not as a pharaoh, but as an ordinary worker beneath the burning sun? No linen luxury, no golden tombs, just endless heat, sand, and struggle. Could you survive a single day? Hey guys, tonight we travel back to the dark side of ancient Egypt, a place shimmering with gold on the surface, but harsh and unforgiving underneath. The air feels thick, heavy with heat and sand. You can almost smell the Nile before you even see it. A slow, muddy lifeline winding through a world that depends entirely on its moods. And as you step into this place, blinking beneath a sky so bright it feels alive, one thing becomes very clear. This is not the Egypt of postcards or museum halls. This is the Egypt of calloused hands, cracked feet, and survival measured one sunrise at a time. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, tell me in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is for you right now. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You open your eyes to the blinding sun of the ancient world. The year, around 1300 BCE, give or take a few reigns of pharaohs you've never heard of. The place? Somewhere near the village of Deir el-Medina, a settlement of artisans, laborers, and dreamers who build tombs for kings but sleep in huts themselves. You're not royalty, not a priest, not even a scribe. You're just you, a commoner. And here, that means your back hurts before breakfast. The first thing you notice is the heat. It's not just warm. It's the kind of heat that presses against your chest and seeps into your bones. The sun feels like a living god staring down from above, Ra himself watching, judging, burning. You squint against the glare, wrap a rough piece of linen around your head, and trudge toward the Nile. That's where life begins and ends here. Everything flows from that river. As you walk, you pass fields of barley and emmer wheat, green strips cut into the golden desert by the river's annual floods. It looks peaceful from afar, but the air smells faintly of rot and fish. Every step squelches through mud, and flies rise from the water's edge in lazy clouds. You hear the croak of frogs, the grunt of oxen pulling plows carved from wood, and somewhere in the distance, the chant of workers calling out to each other under the sun. The Nile gives life, but it takes two. When it floods too high, homes drown. Too low, and famine spreads like a shadow. Historians still argue whether the ancient Egyptians saw the river as a blessing or a threat. But in truth, it was both. You can't live without it. Yet every year you wait to see whether it'll spare you or swallow your harvest whole. You kneel by the water and scoop a handful to your mouth. It's warm, a little gritty, and tastes faintly metallic. You try not to think about what's upstream. Dead fish, animal waste, maybe worse. People here pray to Hapi, the god of the Nile's flood, asking for just the right amount of water. Too much, too little, it's all a matter of divine whim. And you just drink and hope the gods are listening. When you return to the village, you see life unfolding in dusty rhythm. A woman grinds grain between two stones, her arms moving in a slow, endless circle. Children run barefoot, shouting, chasing a stray chicken. A man carves a small wooden figurine. A god, perhaps, or maybe just a charm for luck. The walls of the houses are made of sun-baked mud, already cracking in the heat. Inside, it's dim and stuffy. The roof is flat, often used for sleeping at night when the air finally cools. You duck inside one hut. The floor is bare earth. There's no furniture, just mats, jars, a small clay oven for baking bread. You brush your hand against the wall and leave a faint streak of sweat and dust. This isn't the Egypt of marble pillars or glittering thrones. This is the Egypt that kept those thrones standing. You hear a donkey bray somewhere nearby, and someone curses in response. You smile slightly. Even thousands of years later, that sound is timeless. By mid-morning, the village begins to move toward work. The men gather, tools slung over shoulders, chisels, mallets, baskets. You fall into step with them, heading toward the rocky cliffs beyond the valley. The ground is rough, strewn with stones. The sun rises higher, and your shadow shrinks beneath you until it almost disappears. A fellow worker glances your way and laughs. teeth yellowed from years of sand and beer. "First day?" he asks. You nod. He grins. "Don't worry. You'll learn fast or die faster." A joke, probably. Maybe. As you walk, someone tells a story about a snake spirit that haunts the tombs, kills anyone who mocks the gods. Someone else swears his cousin saw it. The conversation turns to superstition quickly here, as if it's a defense mechanism against the endless toil. You catch bits of old magic woven into casual talk. Amulets that protect from scorpion stings, spells to keep sand out of your lungs, charms to make bread rise evenly. The line between faith and fear is almost invisible. You reach the quarry, a wide, echoing pit of dust and sweat. Men hammer stone blocks loose while overseers stand nearby, holding rods that aren't purely symbolic. Every clang rings against your skull. The air tastes like powdered limestone, dry and choking. Your skin prickles under the sun, and by noon you've stopped feeling your shoulders. It's brutal, yes, but strangely rhythmic. There's order in it, like the pulse of a machine powered by human exhaustion. The workers chant to keep pace. Short, guttural phrases that blend into something almost like a song. You join in without realizing it. At lunch, you sit in the shade of a boulder, eating flat bread and onions. The bread is coarse, baked with bits of grit from the grinding stones. It crunches unpleasantly, but hunger makes everything edible. Someone passes around a jug of beer. Not the cold, crisp kind you imagine, but a thick, sour brew that tastes halfway between oatmeal and vinegar. You drink anyway. It's safer than the water. As the day burns on, you start to understand the rhythm of survival here. It's not about glory. It's about endurance. Every grain of sand in your sandals reminds you that comfort is a modern invention. Every drop of sweat feels like a tithe to the gods of the sun and soil. When the sun finally dips behind the cliffs, the air shifts. The light softens, shadows stretch long and blue. You walk back toward the village with the others, too tired to talk. The sky turns the color of copper and blood, and for a moment you feel a strange peace. Despite the hardship, there's a quiet beauty in the routine, a kind of harmony between suffering and survival. As night falls, you climb onto the roof of your hut and lie down on a reed mat. The stars above you are painfully sharp, like points of glass in the black. You can hear the soft rush of the Nile in the distance, and the low hum of insects rising from the fields. Somewhere a child cries, somewhere else someone laughs too loud. You close your eyes and exhale. You've survived your first day beneath the sun god's gaze. And though the night brings little rest, it carries something almost holy, the feeling of being part of a story so ancient it barely remembers your name. Morning in ancient Egypt arrives without mercy. The first sound you hear is the bray of a donkey. The second is your stomach growling. Hunger is a constant here, never dramatic enough to kill you, just steady enough to keep you moving. You rise before dawn. Before Ra's fiery eye peeks over the horizon, because breakfast doesn't wait for daylight. You shuffle toward the communal oven where the village women are already at work. Smoke curls upward, carrying the scent of something earthy and faintly sour. Bread. The most ordinary food in Egypt and somehow also the most sacred. You watch as a woman kneads dough on a flat stone, her hands caked with flour and sand. She adds water from a clay jar, river water slightly brown, but no one minds. She works quickly, slapping the mixture into rough discs before sliding them into the oven's gaping mouth. The heat is intense, and sweat darkens the linen at her neck. The smell makes your stomach twist, but you know better than to expect softness. Egyptian bread is coarse and hard. The grinding stones shed bits of grit into the flour, and every bite feels like chewing the desert itself. Still, it's life, and life here tastes like barley and dust. You sit beside a young man chewing his breakfast slowly, his eyes half closed. "Eat," he mumbles, handing you a small piece. "Bread keeps your soul on earth." You laugh, thinking he's joking, but he's not. In ancient Egypt, food wasn't just fuel. It was the bridge between body and spirit. The dead were buried with loaves of bread and jars of beer, because even in the afterlife, hunger followed. You tear the bread and take a bite. It's dry, slightly bitter, and gritty enough to make you wince. The man grins, his teeth worn flat like tiny tombstones. You suddenly understand why most Egyptians had dental problems before they turned 30. Historians still argue whether the bread's sand content was accidental or simply inevitable. But either way, it ground generations of teeth to dust. Literally. Then comes the beer, yes, beer for breakfast. Not the golden fizz of modern times, but a thick, cloudy liquid poured from large pottery jugs. It's made from the same barley used in bread, fermented into a mushy brew that tastes faintly sweet, faintly sour, and unmistakably ancient. You drink it warm, and though it's heavy, it fills you up in a comforting way. Egyptians believed beer was a divine gift from the gods, especially Hathor, the goddess of joy and drunkenness. In a world without clean water, it's safer to drink than the Nile. So you drink again and again. There's a strange peace in these simple meals. Bread, beer, maybe a few onions or dates if you're lucky. Fish from the Nile, too, though not today. It's reserved for those who can afford to catch it. Meat, a rare dream. The smell of roasted lamb drifts only from the temples, where priests feast in the name of gods you'll never meet. You might see meat once or twice a year during festivals. Until then, you live on plants, grains, and prayers. You sit in the shade after eating, rubbing the stiffness from your hands. Around you, life hums like a beehive. Children chase chickens through the dust, their laughter mixing with the bleating of goats. Women hang linen to dry, the fabric pale as moonlight against mud walls. The air is warm but not yet suffocating. You know it won't last. One old woman calls you over. She's hunched, her face lined like cracked pottery. She hands you a small clay bowl filled with lentil stew. The smell is earthy and sharp. For strength, she says. You thank her and sip carefully. It's hot and salty, with a hint of garlic. A fringe detail you hadn't expected. Egyptians loved strong flavors. Garlic, onions, coriander. All precious for taste and medicine alike. They even offered garlic to the gods. You imagine Ra himself wrinkling his divine nose at the smell. As you eat, a scribe passes by on his way to the temple granary. His linen robe is clean, almost white, and he carries a reed pen tucked behind his ear. He nods politely but doesn't slow down. You watch him go, wondering what it feels like to live without dirt under your nails. Don't envy them too much, someone mutters beside you. They write for the gods but still bleed like us. It's true. In Egypt, even the educated weren't entirely free. Everyone served something, whether it was a pharaoh, a god, or the river itself. You feel the truth of that with every bite you take. Each crumb of bread carries the labor of many hands. Farmers, millers, bakers, brewers. It's a chain of survival, stretching from dawn to dusk, from flood to famine. By midday, the heat thickens like soup. The smell of baking and sweat blends into something heavy, almost hypnotic. You drift toward the Nile again, partly for shade, partly for escape. Along the way, you pass a small shrine, a simple stone slab with offerings at its base. A few wilted flowers, a slice of bread, a splash of beer. Someone whispers a prayer to Tauret, the hippo goddess of fertility and safety. You nod out of respect, unsure whether you believe, but unwilling to risk offense. In Egypt, gods watch everything, even lunch. Near the water's edge, a group of women wash dishes and gossip in low tones. They laugh about a man who tried to sell fake amulets at the market, swearing they could make crops grow faster. One of them, sharp-eyed and mischievous, says, "Maybe he should sell bread that doesn't crack your teeth instead." The others giggle. Humor is survival, too. You sit on a rock and dip your feet into the Nile. The water feels cool, alive. Tiny fish nibble at your skin. For a moment, it's bliss. You close your eyes and breathe in the scent of wet earth, papyrus, and life itself. Then someone nearby shouts. A boy's caught something in a net. A wriggling fish, silvery and flashing in the sunlight. The crowd cheers softly. You watch as he runs to his mother, proud as a prince. Tonight, their dinner will taste like triumph. Small victories like that mean everything here. You think again about how fragile it all is. The crops depend on the flood. The flood depends on the gods. The gods depend on the prayers of people who are barely surviving. It's a delicate balance, one wrong season away from ruin. And yet, somehow, it works. For thousands of years, it works. As the sun begins to lower, you return home, still chewing the last of your bread. A single thought stays with you, how something so simple can shape an entire civilization. Bread and beer, barley and sweat. They're the true monuments of Egypt, not the pyramids. You realize that while pharaohs built for eternity, it was ordinary people like you who built every single day just to live to the next one. That night, as you lie under the desert sky, your stomach full but your mind restless, you hear the quiet ripple of the Nile in the distance. You smile faintly. Tomorrow you'll eat the same thing again. And somehow that thought feels almost comforting. Morning again. The air is thick with dust, carrying the faint scent of wet clay and something alive. You blink away sleep, stretch your sore arms, and feel straw crackle beneath your back. You've been sleeping on the roof, like most Egyptians do when the night air is cool enough to make it bearable. But the sun is already climbing, and the heat begins its daily invasion. You glance down at your home, or what passes for one. A squat, rectangular hut of mud brick baked in the same sun now roasting your skin. It's not much, but it's yours. The walls, once reddish-brown, have faded to the color of bone. They crumble slightly when you brush them, leaving powder on your fingertips. Inside, it's darker, almost cave-like. You duck through the low doorway and inhale the scent of smoke, grain, and bodies. The floor is dirt. There's no furniture except for a few woven mats and clay jars. One jar holds water, another holds beer, and a third, your least favorite, contains what passes for a toilet. You keep it in the corner, covered with reeds. It's not glamorous, but it beats walking to the communal pit in the middle of the night, where snakes sometimes curl in for the shade. You sit on the mat, listening. A baby cries in the house next door. A woman shouts something about lost bread dough. A donkey brays answered by laughter. The village is awake, and life buzzes like a swarm of bees. Egyptian homes were never meant for comfort. The walls keep out most of the sun, but also trap the heat that builds through the day. You open the small slit window, a narrow rectangle cut high near the roof, and a puff of hot air drifts in. The wind carries sand, dust, and the occasional mosquito. They love you here. You wave one away from your ear and groan. The Egyptians had a few tricks to fight off insects. Burning herbs, hanging fish bones near doors, or sleeping under linen cloth soaked in oil. You try the last one sometimes, but it mostly just makes you smell like a fried onion. Historians still argue whether mosquito-borne illnesses like malaria were common here, but judging by the constant buzzing in your ear, you wouldn't be surprised. You step outside. The village lanes are narrow and packed with people. Children run barefoot, their skin gleaming with sweat and dust. A group of women gossip under a palm-thatched awning while grinding grain, the rhythmic scrape of stone against stone echoing in the heat. You spot one man patching his roof with fresh mud, kneading it with his feet before spreading it like dough. It looks easy, but you know it's not. Mud brick walls crumble after heavy rains, or after one good argument with the neighbor's goat. Every few years, families rebuild from the ground up. As you pass, a small boy offers you a frog. "Good luck charm," he says proudly. You laugh and ruffle his hair. The frog squirms, clearly unhappy about its newfound career in magic. Egyptians believed frogs were symbols of life and rebirth, thanks to the way they appeared after the Nile floods. You let the boy keep it. You already have enough luck, and it hasn't helped much so far. Further down the lane, a woman squats beside a clay stove. She's baking more bread, the smell making your stomach twist again. The smoke rises into the still air, drifting lazily before vanishing into the bright white sky. You ask her how long she's lived here. She shrugs. "Always. My mother, too. We build, we eat, we sleep. Then our children do the same." She says it not with bitterness, but with the calm acceptance of someone who knows life doesn't change much. Inside the houses, you hear snatches of conversation. Wives scolding husbands, old men complaining about the harvest, children reciting simple prayers. Life here is communal, walls are thin, sounds carry. Privacy is a luxury only the dead enjoy. You step around a pile of broken pottery near the street corner. A man sits nearby, repairing sandals made of woven papyrus. His hands are rough, fingers wrapped in strips of linen. He waves you over, pointing at your cracked soles. You walk like a noble, he jokes. All air, no leather. You grin, sit down, and let him work. The sandals are crude but sturdy. As he weaves, he hums a low tune, a lullaby or maybe a prayer. He tells you a story about a time the village flooded and snakes filled the streets. Big as my arm, he says, gesturing dramatically. They came for the frogs, not us. But tell that to my wife when she screamed for a week. You laugh, imagining the chaos. That's the thing about Egyptian villages. They're full of stories. Some true, some exaggerated, all part of the rhythm that keeps everyone sane. Without them, the monotony might break you. By midday, the heat is unbearable. The air feels solid, shimmering above the ground. You retreat inside your house again, grateful for the shade, even if it's as warm as an oven. You lie on the mat and fan yourself with a woven palm frond. The air barely moves. Sweat drips from your forehead onto the packed earth. You close your eyes and listen. Outside, someone's goat bleats loudly. A child laughs, then cries. The thud of feet, the buzz of flies, the distant bark of a dog. It all blends into a strange, sleepy symphony. You could almost drift off, if not for the heat. You roll over, staring at the ceiling. It's made of reeds and branches plastered with mud. Every so often, small flakes fall into your hair. You sigh. Egyptians didn't build for comfort, they built for function. If it kept the sun out and the sand mostly away, it was good enough. Still, there's beauty in the simplicity. You notice how the walls glow faintly when the afternoon light hits them, how the smell of baked clay feels oddly soothing. You think about how these same homes will crumble into the earth one day, just to be reborn as new bricks. Even your shelter follows the same cycle of life and decay that defines everything here. As evening approaches, you climb the stairs, really just a series of bricks stacked unevenly against the wall, to the flat roof. Up here, the air moves again. You spread your mat, stretch out, and watch the village below. Smoke curls from stoves, dogs chase each other through alleys, and voices rise and fall like waves. Your neighbor, an older man named Menkhaf, waves at you from the next roof over. Hot enough for you? He calls. You laugh. If it gets any hotter, I'll sleep in the Nile. He chuckles. You'll just feed the crocodiles. They like soft meat. You both laugh, but it's only half a joke. Everyone knows the Nile hides dangers beneath its calm surface. Still, the river gives life and the people accept the risks as part of the deal. As the sun dips low, the village softens. Shadows stretch long, painted gold by the dying light. The walls glow, the air cools, and somewhere a woman sings to her child. It's a song you've heard before, a lullaby that promises safety and rest, even though safety here is never certain. You close your eyes and let the sounds wash over you. The hum of insects, the creak of reeds, the faint laughter drifting from below. For a moment, you feel something close to peace. Life here is hard, yes. Cramped, noisy, relentless. But it's also full of sound, of movement, of small joys that shimmer like mirages in the heat. As you drift toward sleep, you smile faintly. Tomorrow will be the same. Mud huts, mosquitoes, and the endless hum of survival. But for now, you let the world fade into the soft rhythm of the desert night. The first sound you hear isn't the birds or the breeze. It's the thud of wood against stone. The rhythmic beat of hammers striking rock echoes across the valley before dawn. A sound so constant that even your dreams seem to pulse with it. You blink yourself awake, roll off your mat, and stretch your aching limbs. The day hasn't even begun, and already your muscles protest. You've got work to do. You wrap your linen cloth around your waist, tie it tight, and head out with the others. The cool of morning barely lasts the walk from the village to the cliffs. The ground crunches beneath your sandals, dry and cracked. Ahead, the pale cliffs of Thebes loom like the ribs of some ancient god, riddled with caves and half-carved tombs. The air smells faintly of dust and sweat, a mix that defines most Egyptian mornings. "Keep up!" someone shouts. You look up to see an overseer, whip slung lazily across his shoulder. He's grinning, but there's no kindness in it. The whip's not just decoration. It's motivation. And in Egypt, motivation hurts. You join a line of workers hauling stone blocks on sleds. The men chant in unison short, rhythmic phrases that match the pull of the ropes. Ha-ah! Ha-ah! The chant keeps the pace steady, but it also keeps spirits from breaking. There's something ancient and primal in it, something that turns exhaustion into ritual. You fall into rhythm, the sun rising behind you like a warning. By the time it's fully overhead, the valley is alive with noise. Hammering, shouting, the creak of ropes and wood. Sweat trickles down your back, and dust cakes your arms until you look carved from stone yourself. You pause for a breath, staring up at the sheer face of the cliff where teams of men chip away at the living rock. Each stroke of the chisel sends chips flying into the air like sparks. You think about the monuments you've seen, the towering temples, the massive statues, the perfectly carved hieroglyphs, and realize that all of them began like this. With noise, with pain, with 100 nameless workers carving devotion into stone. Pharaohs may claim credit for these wonders, but their hands never held a chisel. You stop to drink water warm and tasting faintly of clay, but it's enough. Nearby, a man collapses. 2 others rush to help him, fanning his face with scraps of linen. Heat, someone mutters. Too much. The overseer looks down, unimpressed. Then he'll rest forever, he says, waving the others back to work. You feel a flare of anger rise in your chest, but you swallow it. Anger is dangerous here. You return to your post, jaw tight. The work resumes. Each swing of the hammer sends vibrations up your arm, until your hand goes numb. You focus on the rhythm. Lift, strike, breathe. The sound becomes hypnotic, almost musical. A strange kind of peace hides in repetition, and for a moment you almost forget the pain. A young boy runs between the workers, carrying water jars. He can't be more than 12, but his eyes are already old. "Drink," he says, handing you a cup. They say Ra watches the ones who faint first. You raise an eyebrow. And what happens to them? He shrugs. They meet Osiris early. You laugh, though it's dry and tired. Egyptian humor, half joke, half warning. As the day burns on, the noise becomes unbearable. The sound of chisels striking rock echoes off the cliffs, multiplying into chaos. You notice one worker singing softly to himself, a tune that rises and falls like the Nile. You ask what it means. "It's a song for the dead," he says. "So they remember we built their houses." The phrase sticks with you, "we built their houses." That's what this is. Every swing of the hammer carves a doorway for someone else's eternity. You wonder if anyone will build a house for your soul one day. Probably not. Workers don't get tombs. They get sand. During the midday rest, you sit with a few others in the shade of a half-carved wall. The air feels thick enough to chew. Someone passes around bread and beer, the eternal pair. You chew carefully, feeling the grit grind between your teeth. A man named Ka, broad-shouldered and sunburned, leans toward you. "You ever seen a whip mark heal?" he asks suddenly. You shake your head. "It doesn't," he says. "Just fades until it looks like shadow." He says it like a fact, not a complaint. You look down at your own arms. There's a scar there, not from the whip, but from the rope burn of hauling stone. Still, it feels the same. Egypt doesn't break you all at once. It wears you down grain by grain, like sand smoothing a rock. Someone jokes that Pharaoh Ramses himself couldn't lift a single block here, and the group laughs. Not loud enough for the overseers to hear, but enough to let out the pressure. Humor, again, is a kind of rebellion. You've started to notice that. The more people joke, the more unbearable the truth must be. By late afternoon, your hands tremble with exhaustion. The air shimmers with heat. The sound of hammering slows as the light fades, but no one stops until the overseer signals. When he finally does, it's like being freed from a spell. The men drop their tools, stretch aching backs, and trudge homeward in silence. You walk alongside Ka, both of you coated in dust. You think they'll remember us? You ask. He laughs once, short and rough. They'll remember the pharaohs, but maybe the stones remember us. You look back at the cliffs, scarred, beautiful, endless. You like that thought. Maybe the stones do remember. As you approach the village, the air cools. You can smell the faint sweetness of date palms and the smoky tang of cooking fires. You're too tired to talk, too sore to eat much. But as the stars begin to rise, you glance at your hands, cracked, blistered, bleeding, and realize something strange. There's pride in the pain. You've built something that will outlast your name, your bones, maybe even your civilization. You collapse onto your mat, staring up at the dark ceiling. Your muscles twitch with phantom motion, still swinging, still lifting. In the distance, you can hear faint singing from the cliffs, workers staying late, finishing one last block before nightfall. Their voices blend into the hum of crickets and the sigh of wind over the sand. You close your eyes and let it lull you. Tomorrow will be the same. Another dawn, another block, another scar. But for now, you rest, because in ancient Egypt, rest is the only luxury you truly own. You wake before dawn again, but this time, something feels different. The air is still heavy and warm, but the village hums with a low tension, like a whisper that hasn't yet found its words. You step outside, and the first thing you see is a priest walking down the dusty lane, his shaved head gleaming under the faint light of morning. He carries a bundle of incense in one hand and a small bronze statue in the other. The smell that trails behind him is sharp and sweet. Frankincense, the scent of both prayer and fear. Bad omens. Your neighbor murmurs as she sweeps her doorstep. Someone angered the gods again. You glance at her, unsure whether she's joking. But here in ancient Egypt, the line between superstition and survival is thinner than papyrus. The gods are everywhere. In the river that feeds you, the wind that cools you, the insects that bite you, and the stones you carve. They can bless or destroy, often without warning. And if something bad happens, a flood, a plague, even a bad dream, someone must be to blame. You follow the faint trail of smoke toward the temple, a squat building of limestone perched at the edge of the village. The priests are already at work, their linen robes immaculate despite the heat. You watch them pour milk and honey into bowls before small altars. They whisper prayers to appease the gods, eyes half closed, voices steady. The chant rises and falls like the breath of the Nile itself. One of the priests turns to you suddenly. "You there," he says. "You work in the cliffs, yes?" You nod. He frowns. "Then take care today. There are whispers of Seth in the wind." You blink. Seth, the god of chaos, storms, and disorder. The eternal trickster. In Egypt, even the wind can carry his laughter. You're not sure whether to bow or run. On the walk back, the world feels different. The wind gusts, stirring sand into small whirls that dance around your feet. You remember stories told by the fire, of workers struck by lightning, of snakes found coiled in baskets meant for bread, of crocodiles appearing in irrigation canals miles from the river. Coincidences, maybe, or omens. Egyptians didn't believe in coincidences. Everything meant something. You pass a woman drawing symbols in the dust outside her door. Small loops and crosses meant to keep away bad spirits. She hums softly as she works, her voice cracked but strong. You catch a few words. A plea to Isis for protection, to keep her children from sickness. You remember hearing that children here often wear amulets shaped like the Eye of Horus, to ward off evil spirits that cause fever or bad dreams. You reach to touch your own small charm hanging around your neck, a scarab beetle carved from green stone. It's meant to symbolize rebirth. You've started rubbing it out of habit, though you're not sure whether it works. At work, the tension follows. The men are quieter than usual. One mutters that a shadow passed over the sun during dawn. A sign, he insists, that Anubis walks among the living. Another refuses to lift his hammer until someone blesses the tools. The overseer rolls his eyes but lets them do it. He's learned not to mock the divine in front of tired men with heavy stones. A worker named Mena pulls you aside. "You know the tombs we build?" he says in a low voice. "They're not just for the dead. They're traps. Magic traps. You raise an eyebrow. Traps for what? For whatever wants to follow them into the afterlife, he whispers. Spirits, demons, even angry gods. You chuckle uneasily, but his face stays serious. Historians still argue whether Egyptians truly believed in demons as we define them, but the fear was real. The ancient world was thick with unseen forces. If something couldn't be explained, it was simply the work of the gods or something darker. As the sun climbs higher, the heat becomes unbearable. You find yourself working slower, distracted by every small noise. A chisel clatters to the ground behind you, and you nearly jump. The worker who dropped it mutters an apology, crosses his chest, and spits 3 times to chase away bad luck. You do the same just in case. During the midday break, you sit in the shade beside a boulder. The air smells of stone, dust, and sweat. Someone nearby tells a story, half joke, half warning, about a man who mocked the gods and found his house filled with scorpions the next morning. He said it was just bad luck, the storyteller adds. But who believes that? The group laughs, but quietly. You realize how much fear rules here. Not the kind that shouts, but the kind that whispers. Every cough could be a curse, every shadow a spirit. Even the priests, the supposed intermediaries between gods and mortals, are just as bound by that fear. They perform rituals not because they're sure they work, but because they can't afford to risk being wrong. Later that evening, the village gathers near the small shrine by the river. The sky burns red as the sun sinks, and the priests light torches along the bank. You watch the flames' reflection flicker on the water, golden and strange. They chant prayers to Ra, asking him to rise again tomorrow, to defeat the serpent Apep, who tries each night to devour the sun. The story is beautiful and terrifying. The belief that even the sun must fight for survival every single night. You feel a shiver despite the heat. The idea that the world itself could vanish if a god lost a battle somewhere beyond the stars. It's both poetic and deeply unsettling. After the ritual, you linger by the river. The moon rises, pale and distant. A crocodile slips silently through the water, its back glistening like wet bronze. You step back instinctively. People whisper that these creatures are sacred to Sobuk, the crocodile god, protector of the Nile, but also its danger made flesh. You can't tell whether to pray or run. A priest passes by, holding a small oil lamp. You ask quietly, "Do you think the gods ever get tired of watching us?" He looks at you for a long moment before answering. "The gods do not tire," he says softly, "but they forget." That thought stays with you long after you lie down to sleep. The night air hums with insects, the stars bright enough to sting your eyes. You clutch your scarab amulet and close your eyes, whispering a small prayer. Not to be rich, not to live forever, but simply to be remembered. As you drift into uneasy dreams, you imagine the gods above, vast, unknowable, half asleep themselves, watching their creations stumble through the sand, praying into the darkness, hoping for mercy. And maybe, just maybe, you think, that's all any of this really is. A world built on fear, faith, and the desperate hope that someone or something is listening. The morning sun hasn't yet climbed over the horizon, and already you can hear the laughter of children echoing through the dusty lanes. High-pitched, wild, full of life. It's strange. You've grown used to the weary murmurs of adults, the chants of workers, the low hum of prayers. But this sound is different, lighter, free. You follow it, weaving through the maze of mud-brick homes until you find them. A group of Egyptian children running barefoot through the village, chasing a hoop made of bent reeds. They're covered in dust, their linen wraps stained from play and heat. One boy has a smear of clay across his cheek, another a necklace of bright blue beads, probably a protective amulet his mother tied on him at birth. They shout and laugh as the hoop rolls downhill. The game so simple it feels eternal. You can't help but smile. Then one of them trips, scrapes his knee, and immediately bursts into tears. A woman rushes over, his mother or perhaps an older sister. She scoops him up, scolds him gently, then spits on her fingers and rubs the wound. You wince, but here it's not disgust. It's healing. Egyptians believed spit carried protective power, especially from mothers. She whispers something to ward off evil spirits, ties a small linen strip around his leg, and sends him running again. The boy limps for a few seconds, then laughs and joins the game once more. Childhood resilience, it seems, is timeless. Life for Egyptian children wasn't easy, though it started simply. Most went naked until around age 6. It wasn't shameful, just practical in the sweltering heat. Clothes came later once they began helping with real work. You watch as a small girl carries a jar of water almost half her size, stumbling slightly but determined. Her mother laughs from the doorway. "Good practice," she calls out. "One day you'll carry a husband like that." The girl giggles and keeps walking, wobbling under the weight. You learn quickly that Egyptian childhood is short. By age 8 or 9, children already work beside adults. Boys helping in the fields or workshops, girls grinding grain, weaving linen, fetching water. There's no school for most. Only the children of scribes or priests learn to read and write. The rest learn by imitation, not instruction. You hear one father bark at his son, "Watch, don't ask." It's not cruel, just efficient. Life doesn't slow down to explain itself here. As you walk through the village, you see clusters of boys carving small wooden animals. Cows, dogs, crocodiles. Some are surprisingly detailed, with painted eyes and etched scales. Toys, perhaps, but also practice. One older boy laughs as he shows off a small wooden soldier. "For the afterlife," he says proudly. "My father says we all need servants there, too." The casual way he says it chills you a little. Death isn't far away here. It's just part of the future, as ordinary as growing up. Still, the children find joy. They play tug-of-war with papyrus ropes, swim in the shallows of the Nile, and throw clay balls in mock battles. Their laughter floats across the fields like birdsong. You even see 2 boys balancing on a fallen log, pretending it's a ship bound for Punt, the mythical land of incense and gold. For a moment, you can almost forget how hard life is. But then reality creeps back in. You pass a small shrine where a woman kneels, clutching a bundle of linen. Her face is streaked with tears. You realize the linen wraps a child's body. Even now, she hums softly to it, a lullaby. The priest nearby murmurs words of comfort, assuring her that the soul will join Osiris in paradise. You don't linger long. Here, death doesn't pause for grief. It's woven into life itself. Later, you visit a scribe's house, a rare glimpse into a different kind of childhood. Inside, a boy about 10 sits cross-legged, carefully copying hieroglyphs onto a broken piece of limestone. His teacher watches sternly. Again, the man says, "The gods see every mistake." The boy sighs and starts over. You peek over his shoulder. The symbols are beautiful. Tiny birds, eyes, reeds, all perfectly balanced. "It means, to know is to serve," the teacher explains. You nod, wondering if the boy truly understands what that means. Knowledge here is power, but also obedience. Outside, the workers' children are still playing. One girl runs past you with a small clay doll. Its painted face is half worn away, but she holds it like a treasure. You ask her name. "Neferu," she says proudly. "It means beautiful." You tell her it suits her, and she beams, missing one front tooth. "Do you have dolls where you come from?" she asks innocently. You hesitate. "We do," you say, "but maybe not as lucky as yours." She grins and runs off, her laughter echoing down the dusty lane. You find yourself thinking about how Egyptians viewed childhood, not as a separate stage of innocence, but as an apprenticeship for life. Boys were expected to grow into workers, soldiers, or farmers. Girls into wives and mothers. Everyone served the cycle: work, family, death, and rebirth. The gods didn't give special treatment to children, but they did assign them guardians. Tauret, the hippo goddess, protected mothers and newborns. Bes, the dwarf god, was said to scare off nightmares. His ugly, grinning face was carved onto cribs and amulets, believed to frighten away evil. You remember seeing one hanging in a doorway earlier, its painted eyes staring out like a silent guard. That night, the village is unusually quiet. The adults are tired, the children asleep on mats under the open sky. You walk along the narrow lanes, hearing only the chirp of crickets and the soft rustle of palm leaves. The moonlight spills across the rooftops, turning the mud-brick homes silver. You pause near a small courtyard, where a mother hums over her sleeping son. Her voice is low, rhythmic, a melody older than memory itself. "You'll grow strong," she whispers, "and work for the pharaoh. You'll feed the gods and live forever in their eyes." You almost believe her. You lean against a wall, listening, realizing how fragile that promise truly is. Most children won't live to adulthood. Disease, accidents, hunger, they steal more lives than time ever will. And yet, the lullabies never stop. Maybe that's the real strength of this place. Hope that refuses to die, even when everything else does. As the mother's song fades into the night, you glance toward the horizon. The first hint of dawn glows faintly there, soft and gold. Tomorrow, the children will run again, barefoot and laughing, chasing their hoops through the dust as if they'll live forever. And for those few moments each morning, they do. The morning air feels heavy with heat and the scent of wet clay, but before the men march off toward the cliffs, the women are already working. You hear them long before you see them. The rhythmic scrape of grain stones, the splashing of water in jars, the soft rise and fall of voices blending like a river song. You turn toward the sound, and there she is, an Egyptian woman, back bent, arms strong, hair bound with linen. The sun hasn't yet burned through the morning haze, and still, she's been awake for hours. In ancient Egypt, a woman's day begins long before dawn. Bread must be baked, water fetched, children dressed, and offerings prepared. You watch as she kneads dough with quick, sure hands, each motion practiced into perfection. Her face glistens with sweat, her eyes half-lidded with focus. There's grace in it, a rhythm born not of choice, but necessity. Her daughter, no more than 12, carries a jar nearly as tall as her. She balances it on her head with practiced ease, walking toward the river barefoot. "Careful," her mother calls, but the girl just laughs. You can tell this is a daily ritual, one that has repeated for generations. You've heard it said that Egyptian women were freer than most in the ancient world, and in some ways it's true. They could own property, run businesses, even divorce their husbands. But freedom doesn't mean ease. You look around and see that every woman here bears a kind of quiet strength, the kind that comes from carrying the weight of both home and survival. Inside one house, you peek through an open doorway. A woman sits weaving linen on a wooden loom. The rhythmic clack of the shuttle fills the small room as she works by the dim light of an oil lamp. Each thread moves through her fingers like a heartbeat. Linen here isn't just clothing, it's currency, offering, and symbol. Even the dead are wrapped in it, layer after layer, as if the touch of a woman's hands can soften eternity. The woman looks up and notices you watching. "You'd rather swing a hammer than weave, wouldn't you?" she says with a knowing smile. You laugh softly. "At least the stones don't talk back," you reply. She grins. Neither does the linen, but it still remembers every pull. Her words linger in the air, half metaphor, half truth. Outside, another woman sits grinding barley. The motion is endless, circular, hypnotic. Her toddler sits beside her, playing with a lump of mud, while an older boy fans the flies away. The woman hums softly, a lullaby mixed with exhaustion. You notice her hands, calloused, cracked, and strong. These are the hands that raise a nation, yet history rarely writes their names. By midday, the heat becomes punishing. The men labor under the cliffs, but the women labor here, in the heart of the village. You see them tending to small gardens behind their homes, patches of onions, garlic, lentils, and herbs that add both flavor and medicine to their meals. One woman squats to pull weeds, muttering to herself. "Batet keep the cats fat," she says, glancing at a thin tabby lounging nearby. You know why cats are sacred here, protectors of grain and home. A well-fed cat means fewer rats, and fewer rats mean full bellies. As you walk through the narrow lanes, you overhear conversations, snippets of gossip and hope. One woman complains about her husband's laziness. Another whispers about a dream she had where Anubis spoke to her, warning of illness. Historians still argue, you think, whether these dreams were superstition or self-prescribed comfort. Either way, they give meaning to the endless rhythm of survival. Later, you're invited to sit under the shade of a fig tree where 3 women rest together, shells of dates scattered between them. They talk about childbirth openly, fearlessly. You scream, then you laugh, one says. If you live, you drink beer. They all chuckle, but there's a weight beneath the laughter. You realize how dangerous childbirth still is, even here, where midwives know the body better than any priest. They use herbs, coriander, honey, and something they call milk of the poppy. It dulls pain, but sometimes dulls life, too. You remember hearing about Tauret, the hippo goddess of childbirth. Her statues stand guard in nearly every home. Round belly, fierce eyes, lion's claws. She's terrifying and comforting all at once. A protector who looks like she could crush a crocodile. One woman wears her image on a pendant around her neck, rubbing it unconsciously as she speaks. Tauret watches, she murmurs. Even when we forget to ask. By late afternoon, the streets grow quieter. The women who aren't grinding, baking, or weaving are washing clothes by the river. The water glints under the fading sun, and the laughter of girls rises like birdsong. You watch them splash and chatter, the day's exhaustion washed away in shared joy. A young woman, maybe 16, sings as she scrubs, a tune about love and lotus flowers. She catches your gaze and smirks. You listening to women's songs now? She teases. You shrug. They're better than the overseer's orders. She laughs, and for a moment, the heat and hardship fade, replaced by something almost beautiful. At dusk, the village changes rhythm again. Smoke curls from stoves, and the smell of roasting onions and lentils fills the air. The men return from the cliffs, shoulders heavy, faces lined with dust. The women greet them with quiet efficiency. Bowls of food, jugs of beer, gentle teasing. One wife scolds her husband for tearing his linen wrap. If you ruin another, you can wear the old mat, she snaps. He grins sheepishly, and everyone laughs. There's affection beneath the roughness. You realize then that in this world, affection doesn't come through words but through work. A baked loaf, a patched garment, a scolding that hides worry. Egyptian women don't speak of love. They live it in every act of endurance. When night falls, you climb again to your rooftop mat. Below, you can hear the faint murmur of voices. Women telling stories to children, laughing softly among themselves, whispering prayers to gods who may or may not be listening. You think of the woman weaving linen, the mother grinding grain, the girl balancing her jar, and realize how much of Egypt's soul rests in their hands. You close your eyes, and the last sound you hear is a lullaby drifting on the wind. It's the same tune from before, low, steady, endless. A promise that no matter how harsh the world becomes, there will always be a woman's voice to remind it to keep breathing. The morning air smells faintly of herbs and smoke. You follow the scent through the winding lanes of the village until you find its source. A small, shadowed room with a reed curtain fluttering in the heat. Inside, a man crouches over a clay bowl, grinding something into powder with a pestle made of limestone. His hands move with quiet precision, each motion deliberate, practiced. For fever, he mutters, not looking up. Barley ash, garlic, and honey works better than prayer. You found an ancient Egyptian healer, a man somewhere between doctor, magician, and priest. Here, medicine isn't science. It's faith carved into ritual. The boundary between the physical and spiritual is as thin as a reed leaf. You step closer and glance around the room. Shelves of jars line the walls, each filled with strange things. Dried herbs, crushed minerals, even tiny bones. One jar holds what looks like lizard tails. Another glitters faintly with powdered malachite. The air hums with the mingled scents of incense, rot, and hope. He finally looks at you, eyes sharp despite his age. You look healthy enough, he says. But the sun makes fools of us all. Sit. You do as told, half curious, half wary. He mixes something in a bowl, adds a drop of oil, and stirs. You work the cliffs, yes? The dust gets in the lungs. You must keep them clean. He pushes the bowl toward you. Smell this. You lean in cautiously. The scent burns your nose. Something between mint and smoke. You cough and he chuckles. That means it's working. He dips his fingers into the paste and marks a small ankh symbol on your wrist. Protection, he says. Physical and spiritual. You thank him, and he waves a hand dismissively. Thank the gods, not me. I only borrow their tricks. As you leave, you can't help but marvel at how blurred everything feels here. Science and sorcery, logic and belief, all tangled together like the threads of a linen shroud. Historians still argue whether Egyptian medicine was superstition or genuine skill, but walking among these people, you realize it was both. They didn't separate healing the body from healing the soul, because to them, they were the same thing. You head toward the river, where another healer, a woman this time, tends to a group of mothers and children. She's grinding herbs under the shade of a date palm, humming as she works. For stomach pains, she explains to a young mother, handing her a bundle wrapped in papyrus. Steep it in beer, not water. Beer makes the gods listen. You crouch beside her and ask what's in the bundle. She smiles slyly. You don't want to know, but it works. You laugh, but she leans closer and adds, and if it doesn't, well, then it's because you offended someone up there. She nods toward the sky. The tone isn't fearful, just matter of fact. Cause and effect, divine addition. As the day grows hotter, you find yourself near the workers' camp at the cliffs again. A man coughs violently nearby, clutching his chest. Someone fetches a priest, not a doctor. The priest sprinkles natron salt over the man's head and recites a spell to drive out the evil wind inside him. The man breathes easier after, whether from magic or relief you can't tell. You watch the priest's face. Calm, practiced, almost bored. He's done this 1,000 times. Later, another worker slices his hand on a chisel. Blood wells up bright red, shocking against the beige of dust and sunburnt skin. The healer you met earlier hurries over, pressing linen soaked in honey to the wound. It will keep the flies away, he explains. You remember reading that honey has antibacterial properties, but here it's sacred, a gift from the gods themselves. Bees are divine messengers. Their honey, liquid sunlight. Maybe that belief is what gives it power. The healer hums a quiet spell under his breath. Something about Anubis guarding the flesh. You can't tell if it's prayer or poetry, but it feels comforting. That night, after the day's labor, the air is thick with incense. A funeral procession moves slowly through the village. The body, a man wrapped tightly in linen, is carried on a wooden stretcher. The mourners wail in practiced rhythm, voices rising and falling like the Nile's tide. You follow quietly, the flicker of torches casting long, strange shadows on the walls. They stop outside a small mud brick chapel, where a priest waits, face painted with ochre and lined with wisdom, or weariness, it's hard to tell. May his heart be light, the priest says, lifting a feather carved from gold. May it balance against the truth. You watch as they lay the body down, anointing it with oils that smell of cedar, resin, and myrrh. The scent is sharp, almost metallic. A woman nearby whispers that these oils will protect the body from decay. She's not wrong. You realize this is the early art of mummification, a mix of chemistry, devotion, and fear. The Egyptians believed that if the body rotted, the soul would be lost forever. So they fought death the only way they knew how, by trying to outweed it. One man steps forward with a small wooden jar. Crocodile fat, he says proudly, for the afterlife. You blink. Crocodile fat? The woman beside you laughs softly. Don't question it. If the gods made it, it must be good for something. The ritual continues late into the night. The air hums with chants, the glow of oil lamps reflecting off the linen-wrapped form. You can feel the reverence, the fear, the hope, all tangled together in this strange dance between death and preservation. When it's over, The priest dips his fingers into the remaining oil and marks your forehead with it. You witnessed the passage, he says. The dead remember those who remember them. You bow your head, unsure what to say. As you walk home under a moon so bright it turns the sand to silver, you can't stop thinking about how fragile the line between life and death feels here. The Egyptians don't fight death the way you do. They prepare for it, shape it, even embrace it. They treat it not as an ending, but as a second birth, one that demands as much care and ritual as the first. You pass by the healer's hut again. He's outside now, washing his hands in a basin of dark water. You ask him whether he believes the dead truly walk among the living. He smiles faintly. Of course, he says. Where else would they go? You stand there for a moment, feeling the night breeze, the faint hum of the insects, the soft glow of the stars reflected in the Nile. Somehow, the thought isn't frightening anymore. It's peaceful. You realize that in this world, medicine and magic are just two sides of the same coin, both small rebellions against the inevitable. The Egyptians don't cure death. They simply make peace with it. And maybe you think that's the healthiest thing of all. You wake to shouting outside, a sharp, panicked sound that cuts through the morning haze. You step into the narrow street, blinking against the sun. A crowd has gathered around a young man kneeling in the dust, his hands tied behind his back. His face is streaked with sweat, eyes wide with terror. Two guards stand over him, bronze-tipped spears glinting in the light. What happened? You whisper to a woman beside you. She doesn't look away from the scene. He stole bread from the granary, she murmurs. From the temple storehouse, no less. You frown. Bread. A few loaves of barley bread, barely worth mentioning. But in Egypt, bread isn't just food. It's life, currency, offering. Stealing from the temple is stealing from the gods themselves. The punishment will not be small. One guard steps forward and raises his staff. The man in the dust pleads, voice cracking. My children, please, they're hungry. His words dissolve into sobs. The guard hesitates for a moment, but the scribe beside him clears his throat and begins writing on a scrap of papyrus. The law doesn't waver. You hear a sickening crack. The crowd flinches as the man collapses, clutching his side. No one intervenes. No one dares. Punishment here isn't just justice, it's performance. A warning written on the body. Later, as the crowd disperses, an old man beside you mutters, "At least they didn't cut off his nose." You glance at him, startled. He nods grimly. They do that sometimes, mark thieves forever, so they can't hide from the gods. You walk away slowly, the image burned into your mind. Life in ancient Egypt runs on rules older than memory itself, and the hand of law is as heavy as the sun. Crime is rare, not because people are pure, but because fear is stronger than hunger. You find yourself near the village's small court, a shaded courtyard beside the temple. Here, justice wears linen and incense. A priest sits on a low stool, a reed pen in his hand, while two men argue before him. One claims his neighbor's goat trampled his garden. The other insists it was the wind that broke the fence. The priest listens, silent and unreadable, before deciding. The goat stays, but the garden gets blessed. Both men bow. Argument over. Divine justice, pragmatic as ever. Historians still argue whether ancient Egypt's justice system was fair or merely functional. It wasn't about guilt or innocence, not really, it was about balance. Ma'at, the sacred principle of truth, order, harmony. Every decision, every action, every breath was supposed to keep the universe in balance. To defy that balance, by stealing, lying, even speaking out of turn, was to invite chaos, and chaos had a name. Seth. You think about the word Ma'at. It's painted on temple walls, carved into stone, whispered in prayers. A concept so vast it governs both law and morality. You realize that in this world, justice isn't human. It's divine. The gods see everything, or so everyone believes. Later that day, you visit the temple granary where the stolen bread came from. Inside, the air smells of grain and dust. Rows of clay jars stretch to the ceiling, guarded by men with shaved heads and stern eyes. The scribe on duty glances up as you pass. "Every grain counted," he says. "Every handful weighed." You nod, sensing the quiet tension that underlies everything here. Hunger makes people desperate, and desperation makes them dangerous. One guard gestures to a small room in the corner. "The priest judge will come tonight," he says. "They'll ask the thief to confess to Osiris." You pause. "Confess to the god of the dead?" The guard nods solemnly. "Better to face him now than later." That night, you return out of grim curiosity. The thief sits in the dim lamplight, trembling. The priest stands before him, wearing a jackal mask painted black and gold. Anubis, guide of souls. The air feels heavy, like the inside of a tomb. The priest's voice is deep and calm. "Speak truth. The gods weigh your heart even now." The man sobs, confesses again, begs for mercy. The priest doesn't reply. He simply dips his hand into a bowl of ink, marks a symbol on the thief's forehead, and says, "Let him live, so he may remember." This mercy of a kind, but also punishment. Shame will follow him through every market and street. You leave the temple uneasy. The silence outside feels different now. The stars above seem sharper, colder. You wonder how anyone lives under the constant gaze of gods who never sleep. The next morning, the thief's family leaves the village. No one stops them. People whisper as they pass, some in pity, others in fear. The boy, maybe 7, looks back once, clutching a small bundle of dates. You catch his eye and nod, but he just stares, solemn and unblinking, before disappearing down the road. As you wander through the market later, you notice how everything here revolves around that same fragile balance. Truth, obedience, fear. A woman haggles over a jug of beer, insisting she gave the correct measure of barley. The seller swears by Hathor that he's not cheating her. They both glance toward the temple as they argue, as if the gods themselves might intervene over a handful of grain. It strikes you that Egypt is a civilization built on belief, but also on surveillance, divine or human, it hardly matters. The fear of being seen keeps everything in order. The workers sing hymns to ward off misfortune. The priests bless their tools. Even the scribes, those guardians of knowledge, pause before writing a pharaoh's name, whispering a small prayer to ensure they spell it right. Later that night, as you lie awake, you think about what happens after punishment, after life itself. Egyptians believe judgment doesn't end with death. In the afterlife, your heart is weighed on a golden scale against the feather of Ma'at. If your heart is heavy with sin, it's devoured by a creature named Amit, part lion, part crocodile, part hippopotamus. Your soul disappears forever. You imagine standing there yourself, your heart trembling on that divine scale. Would you pass? Have you lived truthfully, honorably? Or have you simply survived? The thought lingers like dust on your tongue. You realize that for Egyptians, morality isn't just a choice. It's insurance for eternity. Even the poorest laborer believes his afterlife depends on keeping his heart light. It's the ultimate system of control and comfort all at once. Behave now, rest later. Outside, a jackal howls in the distance. Somewhere, perhaps in another village, another thief is being judged. Or maybe he's simply working, praying, surviving just like you. You close your eyes and think of the feather of Ma'at, drifting weightless through the night sky. Somewhere, the gods are still keeping score. The sun rises blood red over the horizon, and the air already feels like it's pressing against your chest. The Nile shimmers faintly in the distance, a silver thread cutting through the endless desert. But even that promise of water seems cruel this morning. The wind carries grit and heat, a dry breath that whispers of the desert's hunger. Today, you feel the land's cruelty in every step. You walk out toward the fields with a few other workers. The soil here looks fertile at first glance. Dark, moist from the last flood, but it dries fast. The men bend low, planting barley seeds in narrow rows. They work quickly. The sun will scorch them soon. You join in, pushing your hands into the warm dirt. Feels alive, but also treacherous. If the floodwaters are late this year or too low, the crops will wither. The line between feast and famine is razor thin. One man beside you mutters, The gods are testing us. You glance at him. He's older, with leathery skin and eyes like cracked amber. They always test us, you reply, but he only smiles bitterly. No, he says. Sometimes they just watch. By mid-morning, the heat becomes unbearable. The ground beneath your feet radiates like a stove, and your linen wrap clings to your skin. You wipe sweat from your forehead with a handful of dust. It sounds insane, but it works better than water. The horizon ripples, the air shimmering in waves. You think you see figures moving in the distance, shadows dancing just beyond clarity. Mirage or memory or maybe both. You pass the edge of the field where the land gives way to open desert. The dunes stretch endlessly, silent and golden. It's hard to believe that life could cling to this place. Yet somehow it does. You spot a lizard darting between rocks, its scales glinting. A hawk circles overhead, casting fleeting shadows over the sand. Every living thing here seems built from defiance. A sudden noise breaks the stillness, a low growl from the riverbank. You turn and see it. A crocodile half submerged, watching with unblinking eyes. Its body gleams wet and ancient, armored in scales that look carved from the same stone you carve every day. The men around you freeze. One whispers a quick prayer to Sobuk, god of the Nile, the crocodile himself. No one dares to move. The creature hisses once, then slides silently back into the water, as if satisfied with the fear it's inspired. You exhale slowly. He's a messenger, one man murmurs. The river's warning us. You want to laugh, but the words sit heavy in your chest. Here, even superstition feels logical. The Nile gives, the Nile takes, and its mood is never certain. As noon approaches, the world turns white with heat. The light flattens everything. Shadows vanish. You find shade under a half-dead palm, its leaves rustling faintly. The others sit nearby, sharing bread and beer, their faces pale with exhaustion. Someone pulls out a small clay amulet shaped like the Eye of Horus. He presses it to his lips before drinking. Keeps the sun from stealing your strength, he explains. You nod, though part of you suspects it's just another small comfort against something too vast to fight. Historians still argue whether the ancient Egyptians truly understood the desert's danger or simply accepted it as the natural order. You think maybe it's both. No one here tries to conquer the land, they endure it. The desert is older than gods, older than memory. To live here is to bow to it every single day. Later, the sky darkens suddenly. A sandstorm is coming. The wind howls through the fields, lifting clouds of dust that sting your eyes and throat. You pull your linen cloth over your face and crouch low as the storm swallows the world. The sound is deafening. 1,000 voices whispering all at once. Feels alive. You can't see the others, only the swirling gold around you. And then silence. The storm passes as abruptly as it came. The world reappears, rearranged. The dunes have shifted. The riverbank has vanished under a new crust of sand. You stand, coughing, brushing grit from your arms. A man beside you laughs weakly. The gods cleaned the land, he says. You nod, though it looks more like the land just reminded everyone who's in charge. That night, the village feels subdued. The wind hasn't stopped. It hums through the cracks in every wall. You climb to your roof and watch the desert glowing under the moonlight. It looks peaceful now, almost gentle, but you know better. You can still taste sand between your teeth. You lie back, staring at the stars. The sky here is unlike anywhere else. Sharp, infinite, alive. Egyptians believe those stars are the souls of the dead watching, guiding. You trace their patterns with your finger. Orion, the hunter, which they call Sa. The bright one near it, Sirius, the star of Isis. The priests say it's her tear that brings the Nile flood each year. You find that image comforting, that even gods weep, and their grief gives life. Below, you hear voices, low and serious. 2 men speak near the well. One says his neighbor's cow died suddenly. Another swears he saw jackals circling the fields. A curse, one whispers. The storm was warning. You smile faintly. There's always a curse, always a reason. In this world, nothing happens by accident. It's easier to believe the gods are angry than that nature is indifferent. You think back to the crocodile, the storm, the shifting dunes, all pieces of a puzzle too large to see. Maybe the Egyptians were right to fill that mystery with meaning. It makes the chaos bearable. As the night deepens, the desert cools. You can finally breathe again. The silence stretches, vast and sacred. You close your eyes and imagine what it must be like to die here. Not in fear, but in surrender. To become part of the sand, the river, the wind. Egyptians believed the afterlife mirrored this world. Fields of gold, endless harvests, cool water. Perhaps they believed that so deeply because this world was so harsh. Heaven, for them, wasn't luxury. It was relief. You feel the wind brush your face, carrying the scent of dust and something faintly sweet. Lotus flowers from the river, perhaps. You picture the Nile winding through eternity, its waters reflecting stars instead of sun. And for a moment you understand. The Egyptians didn't fear the desert's silence. They turned it into worship. They looked at the emptiness and called it divine. You whisper a quiet prayer, not to any god in particular, just to the land itself. A plea for gentleness, for mercy, for another dawn. The sand shifts softly beside you, almost like an answer. Tomorrow the heat will return, and you'll go on planting, sweating, surviving. But tonight, under the endless desert sky, you let yourself rest in the quiet knowledge that you're part of something far older, far greater, and far more enduring than fear. The morning begins with music. Not the kind you're used to, no melody, no rhythm of strings or drums, but something more primitive, more human. It starts as a low hum from the village square, the sound of men beating clay jars and women clapping in uneven rhythm. You follow the noise through the narrow lanes until you reach the open courtyard where the celebration has begun. For once, the air doesn't taste like dust and sweat. It smells faintly of roasted onions, beer, and something new, joy, a festival. You blink in disbelief. After days of labor, fear, and silence, the village has erupted into color. Someone's painted the walls with streaks of red and blue. Strings of papyrus leaves hang across doorways, and people wear necklaces of flowers that wilt almost instantly in the heat. But no one cares. For one day, just one, their worries seem forgotten. Feast of Hathor. Someone shouts over the noise. Lady of Joy. You remember hearing about her. The goddess of love, music, and drunkenness. The perfect excuse, really, for people who rarely get to laugh. The festival is both sacred and reckless, an offering of chaos to keep life's order intact. A woman grabs your hand and pulls you into the circle. You stumble forward as a group of villagers begin to dance, clapping and stamping their feet in the sand. The music builds, drums made from stretched hide, flutes carved from reeds, the jangling of bronze bracelets. A singer starts to chant, her voice rough and powerful. Drink deep, children of the Nile. Laugh loud. Before the flood returns, you can't help but smile. For once, you're not just a worker, not a subject, not a piece of someone else's eternity. You're simply alive. The beer flows freely, thick and sour, poured from large clay jugs into small cups. You take one and drink deeply. It's warm, almost gritty, but it fills you with a pleasant buzz. Around you, men laugh too loudly, women dance with abandon, and children chase each other between the legs of half-drunk farmers. Someone hands you a skewer of grilled fish, and you eat without asking where it came from. By midday, the heat is brutal, but no one stops. The priests themselves emerge from the temple, wearing wreaths of lotus flowers instead of their usual solemn linen. One of them, a young man with bright eyes, shouts, Hathor smiles on laughter. Dance until your feet forget sorrow. The crowd roars in approval. You find yourself swaying with the rhythm, the world spinning slightly. The sound of drums thunders in your chest. Sweat pours down your back, but you don't care. You're part of something bigger than exhaustion, something ancient. Historians still argue whether these festivals were true acts of devotion or simply excuses to lose control. But watching it now, you understand. Both can be true. In a world ruled by labor, fear, and obedience, chaos itself becomes holy. The sun blazes overhead, turning everything gold and blinding. Someone smears ochre paint across your cheek. For good fortune, they shout, laughing. You grab a jug of beer from a passing tray and take another drink. It burns sweetly down your throat, filling you with a strange euphoria. Around you, voices rise in song. Some joyful, others aching, all of them raw. As the afternoon wears on, the festival grows wilder. Men climb onto rooftops, shouting praises to Hathor. Women toss flowers into the crowd. Children steal handfuls of bread from offerings and run away giggling. Even the animals seem caught in the fever. Goats bleat noisily, dogs chase shadows in circles. The whole village pulses with life. At the height of the celebration, a group of dancers enters the square. Their bodies are painted blue and gold, their movements fluid and hypnotic. They wear masks of cows, the sacred animal of Hathor. The music slows, and the crowd hushes. The dancers move in perfect rhythm, mimicking birth, death, and rebirth. The story unfolds wordlessly in the shifting of hips, the wave of arms, the tilt of heads. The sensual yet deeply spiritual. The boundary between worship and desire blurs completely. You stand transfixed. For a people whose daily life is hardship, this moment feels transcendent. Here, under the relentless sun, they find ecstasy in survival. Then suddenly, laughter breaks the spell. Someone slips, tumbles into the crowd, and the solemnity shatters. Beer spills, cheers erupt, and the celebration surges back into chaos. You laugh until your stomach hurts. By evening, the village is a haze of dust, music, and drunken joy. The priests, no longer dignified, sit cross-legged in the sand, singing hymns badly out of tune. One of them raises his cup and shouts, "May tomorrow never come!" The crowd cheers in agreement, though everyone knows it will, and that's the joke. You sit near a fire, nursing your drink, watching the flames flicker against painted faces. A man beside you, slurring his words, says, "You know what I think? Hathor made beer so we wouldn't remember how hard life is." He laughs, coughs, and falls asleep mid-sentence. You cover him with a linen shawl and take another sip. Across the square, two young lovers dance slowly, oblivious to the world. Their movements are gentle, unhurried. A rare tenderness in a place where everything else feels rushed. You can't hear their words, but their smiles say enough. For tonight, love isn't just a myth on temple walls. It's real, sweaty, human, fleeting. As the stars emerge, the music softens. The air cools, carrying the smell of smoke and beer and roasted lentils. You lean back, dizzy but content. Somewhere nearby, a woman plays a soft tune on a lute. Her voice drifts above the crackle of fire. The gods gave us toil, but laughter we stole. And still they forgive us, for laughter makes us whole. You close your eyes. The song is part lullaby, part prayer. Around you, people begin to fall asleep where they sit on mats against walls in each other's arms. The fires burn low, casting warm halos across the sand. Tomorrow, they'll return to their fields and workshops, their backs bent and hands bleeding. But tonight, they are free, laughing, singing, worshiping in the only way that truly matters, by forgetting their pain. As you drift towards sleep, you think about Hathor, smiling down from the heavens, adorned in gold and sunlight. Maybe she doesn't need temples or offerings. Maybe all she ever wanted was this: the sound of mortals laughing under the stars, defying despair with joy. You smile in the dark, your breath heavy with beer and smoke. For the first time in many nights, the world feels light again. The laughter of the festival still echoes faintly in your head when you wake the next morning. The air smells of stale beer and ash. The streets are quiet now, too quiet. You step outside, blinking against the harsh light, and see the aftermath of joy. Fallen garlands, overturned jugs, a few still sleeping bodies curled up in doorways. A thin haze of smoke drifts lazily above the rooftops. The gods have had their feast. Now life demands its payment. You walk toward the river to wash your face. The Nile is calm, almost too calm. The reflection of the sky ripples softly, broken only by the occasional dragonfly hovering above the surface. Then you see it, something pale floating by. A dead fish. Another drifts past. Then another. You frown. That's not normal. Near the bank, two women whisper to each other in hushed tones. The water smells strange, one says. The other nods, clutching her child. My husband says the frogs are gone. Even the frogs. You lean closer to the water and inhale. She's right. The smell is off. Muddy, sour, metallic. Something's changed. You glance downstream where the reeds rustle softly. The Nile, the giver of life, feels sick. By midday, the rumors have spread across the village. The gods are angry, someone says. Seth sent his plague again. No, another insists. It's the crocodiles. Too many offerings in the river. Everyone has a reason, everyone has fear. You see the priest walking through the square, carrying a censer of burning myrrh. Smoke trails behind him, curling into the air like a prayer. Keep your homes clean, he calls out. Burn incense. Pray to Sobuk and to Sekhmet. Illness walks with the water. And it's true. The sickness begins quietly. A child first, fever, then coughing. Then an old man, shaking, pale. By evening, the healer's hut is full. People crowd outside, pressing jars of beer and bread as offerings, begging for cures. The healer's voice cracks from exhaustion. Garlic! Bring garlic! He shouts. And honey! But you can see in his eyes, he knows it's not enough. You offer to help carry water. The healer nods. Boil it first, he warns. Always boil it. You do as told, though deep down, you know boiling won't stop what's already in the air. Inside the hut, the smell is thick. Smoke, sweat, and something foul beneath. The sick lie on mats, moaning softly. One woman clutches an amulet to her chest, whispering a prayer to Isis. Another mutters that her husband angered a crocodile god by killing a snake near the water. The healer moves from one patient to another, dabbing their foreheads with oil and reciting incantations in a hoarse voice. You kneel beside a young boy who's barely breathing. His skin burns under your hand. The gods are testing us, his mother whispers, tears streaking the dust on her face. You want to say something, anything, but your words fail. What comfort can survive here? By the second day, the air itself feels heavier. The smell of rot creeps through the village. The Nile has turned sluggish, its surface clouded with drifting reeds and the occasional carcass of a fish or bird. Even the cats avoid it now. People burn incense constantly. The smoke stings your eyes but masks the stench. At night, the priests hold a ceremony by the river. Torches flicker in the wind as they chant hymns to Sekhmet, the lioness goddess of plague and healing. Her image is fierce and radiant, a woman with a lion's head and eyes of fire. She brings sickness, one priest explains to you, but she also takes it away. If she is fed with prayers, she will leave us. You watch as they pour beer and honey into the Nile, their voices rising in desperate harmony. The flames of their torches shimmer on the water, making it look like the river itself is burning. For a moment, you think you see movement beneath the surface, a ripple that isn't wind, a shape that isn't reflection. Maybe it's just your imagination, or maybe the gods really do walk beneath these waters. Days pass. The sickness spreads and fades in waves, like the flood itself. Some survive, some vanish into silence. The dead are buried quickly, wrapped in simple linen, their names whispered but not carved. There's no time for tombs, no stone memorials, only memory. You help dig one of the shallow graves, your hands blistered from the effort. The earth is hard, dry. You can feel the weight of every breath around you, heavy with grief. Historians still debate whether ancient plagues in Egypt were caused by bad water, parasites, or something unknown. But standing here, watching the smoke rise from small household fires, you realize it doesn't matter. To the people, it's divine will. Their world is too fragile to face randomness. There must be meaning behind suffering. Otherwise, what's left? One evening, as the worst seems to ebb, you walk along the Nile again. The air is still eerily quiet. The water glows faintly in the moonlight, smooth as glass. Then you hear it, a splash. You freeze. Something large moves just beneath the surface. The hairs on your arms rise. A crocodile again, maybe, or worse, something unseen. You take a step back. Egyptians believe curses live in water. Spirits of the dead, restless, waiting for offerings. You whisper a quick apology to the river and toss in a handful of grain. The ripples fade, and the night grows still. When you return to the village, a woman stops you. She's holding a small jar of salt and an amulet shaped like a lotus flower. For protection, she says quietly. Put it near your bed. Keeps away bad dreams. You thank her and do as she says. That night, for the first time in days, you sleep deeply. You dream of the river, clear again, and of stars reflected in its surface like coins. When you wake, the air feels lighter. The sun is gentler. The healer says the sickness has begun to fade. People return to their fields, cautious but relieved. The children laugh again. You see the same priest from before washing his hands in the Nile. The gods are merciful, he says. They test, but they forgive. You don't know if it's true. Maybe the gods didn't do anything at all. Maybe the Nile simply healed itself. But as you watch the water flow again, carrying reflections of the sky, you realize something quietly profound. Belief, whether true or not, has kept these people alive through every disaster. Fear may wound them, but faith heals in ways no herb ever could. That night, you sit by the riverbank under a vast, starlit sky. The air smells fresh again, washed clean by time and wind. You close your eyes and listen to the soft murmur of water. For now, at least the gods are silent, and that silence feels like mercy. The morning comes heavy and gold, the light spilling over the cliffs like molten fire. You walk toward the worksite again, and as the path rises through the valley, the landscape opens before you. Pyramids, tombs, and half-finished monuments stretching across the horizon. From afar, they look eternal. Up close, they're just stone, sweat, and suffering. Today, the worksite feels different. The overseers shout louder. The air seems thicker. There's tension beneath the usual rhythm, like a drumbeat about to break. A new order came last night. Pharaoh wants progress doubled before the festival of Osiris. The deadline is impossible. Everyone knows it, but no one dares say it aloud. You join the line of men dragging a sled up the ramp, the stone block creaking and groaning like a living thing. The chant rises, ha, ah, ha, ah. But the usual rhythm feels desperate now, frantic. Dust clouds bloom under your feet. The sun beats down mercilessly. Sweat pours down your back until your linen wrap clings like glue. The overseer cracks his whip in the air. Not hitting, just reminding. The sound alone is enough to make every back straighten. The pharaoh watches, he shouts. The gods watch. You keep pulling. Your palms bleed. The stone moves another inch. A man beside you collapses, his body folding like cloth. The line falters. The overseer curses, shoves another worker into his place, and the chant resumes. The fallen man doesn't move. Two others drag him to the side, out of the way. No one stops. There's no room for mourning here. Later, you find his body laid beneath a half-constructed wall, wrapped in a torn piece of linen. No tomb, no prayers, just the indifferent silence of stone. You place a small scarab amulet on his chest, a gesture you've seen others do. For rebirth, you whisper, feels hollow. The sound of chisels fills the air again. Steady, relentless, like the heartbeat of the earth itself. You join another team smoothing the face of the wall. Each tap sends dust into your lungs. Your arms ache, your hands tremble, but you keep working. Around you, the cliffs shimmer with heat, the light bouncing off the limestone until everything glows white. You think about the men buried under these stones, those who died building the dreams of others. The pharaohs will be remembered forever, their names carved in gold. But the ones who carried, carved, and bled, they fade into the dust, unspoken. Maybe that's why you feel the urge to remember them now, to tell their story before it vanishes beneath the weight of eternity. Do you ever wonder, Someone mutters beside you. Why we build tombs so big for the dead, but none for ourselves? You glance at him, a wiry man with cracked lips and tired eyes. Because they tell us to, you answer. He grins faintly. Maybe one day someone will build for us, too. You laugh, but it dies quickly. Historians still argue whether pyramid workers were slaves or paid laborers. Standing here, you realize it hardly matters. Payment doesn't make the work easier. The loyalty isn't to coin, it's to survival. At noon, you take your meager lunch under a sliver of shade. Bread, onions, beer, the holy trinity of endurance. You chew slowly, your jaw aching. The bread tastes of sand again. Someone nearby hums a tune, low and sad. You recognize it from the funerary rites, the same song sung to guide souls to the afterlife. Here, among the living, it sounds almost defiant. After lunch, a scribe arrives to record progress. His linen robe is spotless, his pen delicate as a reed stalk. He notes the number of stones moved, the men present, the ones missing. His voice is calm, detached, as if listing the contents of a pantry. When he leaves, someone spits in the dust. May the gods weigh his heart heavy, a worker mutters. The others nod silently. The afternoon drags on. The sun blazes mercilessly. You lose track of time, of self. The work consumes everything. The sound of stone grinding against stone becomes almost musical. You start to feel lightheaded, your body moving on instinct. Somewhere deep inside, you sense that this endless repetition is the true heartbeat of Egypt. Not the pharaoh, not the priests, not even the gods. Just this rhythm of human endurance against impossible odds. Then, near sunset, a shout rings out. A block has cracked. A massive slab split clean down the center. The overseer storms over, red-faced, furious. Who did this? No one answers. Everyone stares at the ground. He grabs one man at random and drags him forward. You, he barks. You were here. The man stammers, shaking his head. The whip flashes. You turn away. You can't watch. The sound is enough, the thud, the gasp, the silence. The overseer spits on the ground and storms off, muttering curses to Seth, the god of chaos. The punished man curls into himself, unmoving. Someone later helps him limp away. No one speaks of it again. That night, you stay behind after the others leave. The worksite is silent now, the cliffs painted in fading gold. You walk among the unfinished walls, running your hand along the cool stone. It's strange. These blocks feel alive, humming faintly with the energy of all who touched them. Every groove, every mark holds a fragment of someone's life. You close your eyes and imagine the pyramid complete, gleaming under the sun, a monument to eternity. And beneath it, bones, yours, theirs, forgotten. You whisper to the silent structure, "You'll outlast us all, won't you?" The wind answers softly, whistling through the scaffolding. For a moment, it almost sounds like a sigh. As you return to the village, the horizon glows faintly with torchlight from the workers' camp. Men sit in small circles, eating, singing quietly to themselves. The songs are weary but warm. One man strums a lute, another taps rhythm on a jar. The lyrics drift through the air. We build for kings, but sleep in sand. Still our names rest in the land. You feel something stir in your chest, a mix of sorrow and pride. Maybe that's all the immortality you need. Not a tomb, not a monument, but the whisper of your name in a song that lingers after you're gone. When you finally lie down on your mat, the stars blaze overhead. You can still taste the stone dust in your mouth. You think of the pharaoh, sleeping one day in his grand tomb, untouched by the heat, surrounded by treasures. And you think of the men who built it, buried in shallow graves, nameless, yet eternal in every grain of sand that touched their sweat. You close your eyes, whispering to yourself, "We build for them, but we belong to the earth." And for the first time, the thought doesn't feel bitter. Feels true. Night has fallen across the desert, and for once, there's no shouting, no hammering, no sound but the low, endless sigh of wind. You climb to the roof of your hut, the sky stretching above you in a black ocean of stars. The air smells of sand and smoke, faintly sweet from the dying embers of cooking fires. The heat of the day still lingers in the walls, but the wind is kind tonight, brushing your face like cool silk. You lie back, staring upward, watching constellations shimmer in silence. The Egyptians believe those stars are souls, spirits of the righteous sailing across the heavens in Ra's boat, guiding him through the underworld each night so he can rise again in the morning. You wonder if that's true. You wonder if the men who died under the sun, whose names no one remembers, found their way to the stars too. Maybe every flicker up there is someone who once walked beside you, hammer in hand, dreaming of rest. A soft sound interrupts your thoughts. Footsteps on the rooftop next door. You glance over and see Menkhaf, the older worker who lives beside you. He's sitting with his legs crossed, looking out toward the horizon. Between you, the gap of a single wall. He says, "Can't sleep either?" You shake your head. "Too quiet." He chuckles. "Quiet is a gift. Don't waste it." He takes a sip from a clay jug, then holds it out. Beer. Still warm, but it does the trick. You accept, the taste bitter and familiar. The two of you sit in silence for a while, passing the jug back and forth. Below, the village breathes in rhythm. Soft snores, the occasional bray of a donkey, the flutter of palm leaves. The Nile gleams faintly in the distance, catching the moonlight like a blade. "Do you ever think," Menkhaf says at last, "about what happens after?" You glance at him. "After work." He shakes his head. "After life. After all this." He gestures toward the dark cliffs. "They tell us there's a paradise waiting. The field of reeds. No hunger, no heat. Just peace. But what if there's nothing?" The question hangs between you, heavy as the night air. You think for a moment before answering. Maybe it doesn't matter. Maybe this, you wave toward the stars, is enough. He smiles faintly. "You talk like a priest. Maybe I'm just tired." You both laugh quietly, but beneath the laughter lies a truth you can't quite name. The gods, the afterlife, the rituals, their comforts, yes, but also mirrors. They reflect what people need most. The promise that suffering has meaning. The hope that exhaustion leads somewhere gentler. A breeze stirs the sand below, whispering along the walls like a voice. Menkhaf sets down the jug. "You know," he says, "I had a dream last night. I was standing in a field green as emerald, endless. The air was cool. My wife was there, my sons. No noise, just peace." You smile. "That sounds like heaven." He nods slowly. Maybe it was. Or maybe it's just what the mind shows us when it's too tired to remember the desert. You both sit quietly for a long time after that, the only sound the distant ripple of the Nile. You think about how dreams work here, not as escape but as survival. In a world this hard, even illusions are sacred. When Menkhaf finally goes below, you stay. The stars seem closer now, bright enough to touch. You trace the pattern of Orion again, Sa, as the Egyptians call him, the eternal hunter, protector of souls. You whisper a small prayer to him, not for strength, but for rest. As the night deepens, the air cools further. Somewhere far off, a wolf or maybe a jackal howls. The sound is eerie but beautiful. You think of Anubis, god of the dead, guardian of tombs. Egyptians say he watches over those who die without monuments, ensuring their spirits aren't lost. You hope that's true. You hope the nameless ones, the builders, the mothers, the children, find his path in the dark. Your thoughts drift to the cliffs where you work today. Even now, you can see faint torchlight flickering there. The priests must be holding a burial ceremony. One of the overseers died this morning, struck by falling stone. You close your eyes and picture the ritual. The anointing oils, the linen wrappings, the whispered prayers to Osiris. For all his cruelty, even the overseer will be sent to eternity with ceremony. Meanwhile, the man who died last week hauling stone lies in a shallow grave, marked only by a pile of rocks. Feels wrong, and yet, it's the way things have always been. Egypt runs on hierarchy, as steady and unyielding as the Nile itself. You roll onto your side, staring toward the horizon where desert meets sky. The moonlight paints the sand silver. You remember something a priest once said, "Death is only the horizon, and a horizon is nothing more than the limit of your sight." You think about that for a long while. Maybe life and death aren't opposites here. Maybe they're just two sides of the same landscape. The village and the tomb, the Nile and the desert, light and shadow. Every day you live in both. You work for the dead, pray for the living, and dream of something in between. The night grows colder. You pull your linen wrap tighter and close your eyes. For a moment, you imagine yourself floating above it all. Above the huts, the river, the cliffs. The world below shrinks to a quiet mosaic of light and shadow. You see the workers in their sleep, the priests tending their fires, the crocodiles drifting through the Nile. And beyond them all, the endless desert, stretching into eternity. In that moment, you understand something simple but profound. No one here truly owns life. Not the pharaoh, not the priest, not the worker. The land owns you all. It shapes you, devours you, and then remembers you, not by name, but by presence. Every grain of sand is a story. Every breeze carries a memory. You feel sleep tugging at you now, soft and irresistible. The stars blur. The air hums faintly, almost like music. Before your mind slips fully into dreams, you whisper to the wind, "If I wake tomorrow, let me still see the river. If I don't, let me join the stars." You smile as your body relaxes, every muscle unwinding. The night wraps around you like linen, cool and weightless. In the distance, a single torch flares against the cliffs, then fades. And in that darkness, whether dream or eternity, you feel peace. The dawn arrives slowly, soft light seeping through a horizon of endless sand. You wake with the faint sound of birds skimming across the Nile, their cries echoing in the still air. For a few moments, you just lie there, staring at the pale sky as it blushes gold. The world feels fragile, as if the gods themselves are holding their breath. You rise and stretch, every muscle stiff and heavy. The village stirs around you. Muted voices, the creak of wooden doors, the hiss of cooking fires coming to life. You walk toward the river, your feet sinking into the cool dust. The Nile greets you like an old friend, shimmering in morning light. Its waters look peaceful again, but you know better. You've seen its moods. You've felt its hunger. Still, you kneel, scoop a handful, and splash it across your face. The chill shocks you awake. You inhale sharply, the air filled with the scent of water and silt. This is Egypt's heartbeat, the river that never stops, the god that never sleeps. Every birth, every death, every stone of every temple somehow flows from this same source. You think about that as you stand, droplets drying on your skin. Maybe, in the end, all of Egypt is just a reflection of the Nile, eternal and restless, giving and taking without remorse. Today feels heavier, somehow, not because of the work, but because you can sense something nearing its end. The sun climbs higher, washing the world in white light. The cliffs glow like fire. The air hums with energy, with purpose. There's talk of a final inspection at the construction site. Pharaoh's priests are coming to bless the tomb before sealing it. You join the others, trudging silently toward the cliffs, your sandals leaving faint trails in the sand that the wind erases almost immediately. The tomb entrance looms ahead, massive and solemn. You step inside and the air changes. It's cool, dry, and strangely still. The walls are alive with color. Painted scenes of gods and kings, farmers and hunters, journeys through the underworld. You trace one figure with your hand. Osiris, green-skinned and serene, ruler of the dead. Around him, tiny hieroglyphs shimmer in the torchlight, each stroke a whisper of eternity. A priest kneels near the sarcophagus, murmuring a prayer. "May his heart be light as Maat's feather," he intones. The scent of incense fills the chamber, sweet, thick, overwhelming. It feels like breathing history itself. You watch as he sprinkles natron salt, pours milk, offers bread and beer, the same humble foods that sustain the living. It's strange, you think, that even in death a king eats like a worker. The ceremony continues. A boy plays a flute, the sound soft and haunting, echoing through the stone corridors. The workers stand in silence, heads bowed. You feel the weight of it, the years of labor, the sweat, the pain, all distilled into this one quiet moment. When the priest raises his arms and declares the tomb complete, a murmur ripples through the crowd. Some cross their chests, others simply exhale in relief. The work is done. As you step outside, the sun blinds you. The air feels different now, emptier. The monument gleams behind you, perfect and cold. The priests will take the credit. The pharaoh will rest forever. And you'll move on to another site, another monument, another eternity built from dust and blood. The cycle never ends. But as you walk down toward the village, something in you feels lighter. Maybe it's pride, or maybe it's just the illusion of completion. Either way, it feels real enough. You pass a group of children chasing a reed hoop through the dust, laughing. Their joy cuts through the weariness like sunlight through cloud. You remember your first morning here, the confusion, the heat, the hunger. You've seen everything since then. Birth, love, death, fear, laughter. Egypt in all its harsh, beautiful truth. You stop by the river one last time. The water glides past, endless, indifferent. You pick up a small stone and toss it in. The ripples spread wide, then vanish. Just like everything else here, brief but not meaningless. You realize that the Egyptians had it right all along. Eternity isn't found in gold or tombs. It's in the things that repeat, the rising sun, the flowing river, the whisper of prayers carried on the wind. Historians still argue whether this civilization worshipped gods or simply worshipped order, but standing here you think maybe they're the same. Order gives meaning, ritual gives hope. Even if it's fragile, even if it fades, it's enough to keep the world turning. As evening falls, the sky turns amber, then crimson, then the deep blue of twilight. You climb to the roof of your hut one last time. The village glows faintly in the fading light. Somewhere, a woman hums a lullaby. Somewhere else, a priest lights a lamp for the dead. The same song, the same flame, generation after generation. You stretch out on your mat, hands behind your head, watching the stars awaken one by one. You think of Menkaph's dream, the green fields, the cool air, the peace. Maybe that's where he is now. Maybe that's where you'll go too, someday. You smile, eyes heavy. The wind brushes over you, warm and gentle. The night hums softly with life, the chirp of insects, the distant rush of the river. You close your eyes and breathe. In the darkness behind your eyelids, you see the Nile winding through eternity, its waters glowing with starlight. You see the pyramids shining under an endless sky. You see yourself, small but not forgotten, a single heartbeat in a civilization that never truly dies. And for a moment, just a fleeting, sacred moment, you feel it. Balance. Ma'at. The order of all things, perfect and unbroken. The desert, the river, the living, the dead, all woven together in one vast, eternal harmony. You whisper into the wind, "May my heart be light. May my soul find its way home." Then the world grows still, the stars blur, and everything dissolves into quiet. The story fades now, soft as the sand beneath your feet. The harsh sunlight of Egypt dims into gold, then amber, then shadow. You feel your breath slow, the rhythm of your heart syncing with the quiet pulse of the Nile. The sounds of labor and prayer, laughter and loss, drift farther away until they become nothing more than echoes carried on a gentle breeze. In your mind's eye, you still see the river flowing under a sky scattered with silver. You see the flicker of torchlight dancing across the walls of ancient tombs. But the urgency, the fear, the endless noise of survival, all of it dissolves. What remains is peace. You realize that every life you witnessed here, the worker's toil, the mother's prayer, the child's laughter, was part of something vast and enduring. None of it wasted, none of it forgotten. The desert keeps everything. The Nile remembers every reflection. Even now, thousands of years later, their breath lingers in the dust, their songs in the wind. So let your body grow still. Let the desert cradle you. The stars above are bright enough to guide you wherever dreams go when the world goes quiet. Rest now, traveler. The gods are silent, the river gentle, and the night eternal.